topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Entrepreneurs Ascending. This isn't just a podcast. This is a call to action for all entrepreneurs who are tired of seeing their businesses and communities suffer while big business continues to grow by the billions. We challenge you to apply the content of our time together to create businesses that your clients can't resist, your employees love to work for, and your communities can depend on. Now is the time for Entrepreneurs Ascending. Hello, welcome to Entrepreneurs Ascending. So glad to have you here with us. And we've got our guest today, Nate Salah, PhD. How you doing, Nate?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Oh, thanks for being here. And I'm so excited to have Nate here. He is an expert in leadership. And the PhD is specifically, like, the PhD is in what again, Nate?
Leadership studies, and specifically entrepreneurial leadership.
Yeah. So hopefully on the discussions that we're going to have today, I think that you'll whoever's listening is going to get a ton out of it. So it's exciting to have you here, Nate. I mean, how many hours would you say that you've probably spent studying leadership and entrepreneurial leadership? Just do a rough guesstimate.
Rough guess, at least 50,000, if not more. Of course, it doesn't start in the classroom. It starts at home, of course, right? Even when we're children.
Yeah.
So we're observing leaders around us and models for leadership. And even as a kid, I was always just hugely interested in this subject of leadership. When I was growing up, I lived in an apartment complex, and just to give you a quick illustration, there's a group of kids. I wanted them to come and hang out with me in my apartment. My mom was a single mom, and so she worked during the day. And I was like, how could I get these kids over to my apartment to hang out with me and not the other kids? So I grabbed a box of, they weren't Fruit Loops because we didn't really have much money. They were the Aldi version, so whatever they were called, something Loops, but they weren't the name brand version. And I put one. I started in the middle of the courtyard of the apartment complex, and I just started dotting them every foot, and just put them on the ground until they got to my apartment. And one by one, those little buddies started shuffling in. And we had a great time. We ate up all the food, emptied the pantry. I learned two things that day. One, people are motivated to be satisfied, right? And leadership, right? And then two, it's hard to sit down when your mom comes home and finds out you raided the pantry with your buddies, and you got a little spanking. So two big lessons that day. But leadership is, leadership. I love it. I love helping. I love sharing, and just growing together as leaders in this context. Yeah.
You also learn that anybody will show up for food. So you got food, people will just show up.
That's right. Absolutely. That's good.
That I think that even works. That's a joke that I make too. Whenever we do like workshops or whatever, it's like, well, as long as we have food, people are going to show up.
Indeed. Yeah. That's right.
So today we've got two topics that, like we normally do. Part one is really going to be about 360-degree vision and what that's about. We all have blind spots. You're blind in an area of your life and business, just because you're a human being. And we're going to talk about how to get that 360-degree vision. And then we've got part two, which is really digging into servant leadership, which I think is near and dear to your heart, isn't it, Nate?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So we'll dig into those two topics. But so the first part here, let's go ahead and just talk about 360-degree vision. What does that mean to you, Nate?
Well, you think about vision, just in its basic concept, the word vision, and how important it is to have vision. So what is that? Vision is, of course, it's sight, but it's also foresight. Right. I mean, vision, we're talking about vision. We can talk about it in concept of like the future. What does the future hold? And vision by definition is imagination, right? We envision maybe a better future state. We envision a place we'd like to go. And so, I mean, and is it an important concept? Of course, it's important. In fact, if you go back to, ancient scriptures, one scripture says, without vision, the people perish. So like, it's a big deal. It's like, okay, no vision, I perish. Right. And it's true, because look, we need to be able to expand our vision beyond this sort of, peripheral view, to say, okay, what are all the challenges around us? What are the obstacles we face? What are the ways that we, like you said, the blind spots that we have, that we can start to work toward having a better understanding of, to mitigate those kinds of issues? And so I think you hit it right on the head, because I think one of the first steps in understanding vision is to make the realization we do have blind spots, because we live in a world that maybe we think, oh, we got it all together and I got this all figured out. As soon as we say that, it's like a nail in the coffin, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so definitely that humility is a
Mhm.
great starting point for vision, and say, you know what, I don't have all the answers. In fact, you talked about working on a PhD. So people, when you tell people you have a PhD, people instantaneously think like you're super smart, right? Like, so much. You have this. Speaking of, let's just use
It's
vision
not a
concept.
bad assumption,
It's,
Nate. I
it's
mean,
well, here's the thing about I believe the more you learn, and let me put it in these contexts, the greater how expansive your vision is. I've found that the more I realize what I don't know, really, there's a really a point of like, hey, there's so much expansive knowledge and information in the world, and my area of understanding is so incredibly small, which then compels me to say, who can I learn from? Where can I grow? And I think that's maybe the direction of our
yeah,
conversation. Yeah. Yep.
yeah. No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, because I think it's very common from what I see. A lot of people just kind of they kind of get stuck and thinking, well, I've already figured it all out, or I figured it up to this point, or I built $1 million business, so like I've got it all figured out. But just because you got to a certain place, I mean, I love the saying, oh, I'm blanking on who said it, but I didn't get this far just to get this far.
Mm.
And for, I think, a lot of folks, they think that just because they figured some things out in the past, it's necessarily what's going to carry them into the future. But I don't know, that's not necessarily always the case.
No, it's not. In fact, vision by definition requires change.
Mm,
Right,
that's good.
because so and let's walk through that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if we want to go someplace else, one, we probably make the assumption that it's better than our current context, right? Some
Hmm.
kind of improvement, some kind of growth. In fact, if we didn't desire improvement or progress, we don't need leaders with vision.
Hmm.
I mean, if I'm just going to stay. But the problem with that mindset is that the world is always changing around us.
Yeah,
Contexts are constantly changing. And unless we adapt and overcome with greater vision, we will be left behind.
absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and, and you can use that context right now. Think about the pandemic. Think about businesses that were faced with, decimation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I own an accounting and advisory firm, and I've watched it, and I've watched entrepreneurs who were able to pivot. I know it's becoming a buzzword, but make a change
Hmm.
because the vision had to adapt.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, a pandemic is a blind spot. Let's call it a blind spot, right?
Right. Right. I mean, it is a blind spot. Like, if you really think you've got it all figured out, and you still live your life thinking that way through 2020, you've got bigger problems than you realize, bro.
Hundred
That.
percent.
No, nobody really. I mean, there's a few people who might have saw it coming, but for the most part, people didn't necessarily see the extent that it was going to be. Even early on, people were saying, "Oh, it's going to be a few weeks. We're going to shut some things down." But what's sad too is I don't think people realized how bad it was going to hurt small businesses compared to big business as well. Because it seemed like big business was pretty well protected throughout it. And I'm not necessarily saying bigger businesses are bad. I'm just saying that in the current climate, small businesses really have a fight on their hands to be able to survive.
Well, this is validated in not only academic studies, but in practice. I mean, if you think about your
Hmm.
typical mom and pop uh, restaurant, right?
Yeah.
That was, I mean, the government funds, the PPP funds and the
Yeah.
EIDL, SBA loans. I mean, they can help a bit, but they're not
Hmm.
going to get more people in the door when people aren't wanting to do want to leave their house. So they're going to struggle tremendously. Now contrast that with,
Hmm.
say, let's talk about Disney. Disney, of course, the parks did shut down as well. But what did they do? They doubled down and moved into the digital world and launched, the Disney Plus. Now the Disney Plus
Hmm.
at I think it was started out at $6.99, $7.99, went over 1 billion users. So, and then it's trending up, right? So just do,
Yeah.
you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out 1 billion times 8 is 8 billion, right? And that's dollars, and that's every month in gross revenue. So you see,
Yeah.
to your point, right? I
Hmm.
mean, Disney is not hurting because of the
Hmm.
pandemic, and nothing against Disney. I think that was a wise move, right? Business wise,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
people needed that, that were in that demographic because they were at home, and now they have an opportunity to watch those movies and whatnot. So certainly it makes sense. But but let's just go back to that mom and pop restaurant.
Hmm.
So they've got to come up with some really creative ways to have a new vision for that blind
Yeah.
spot they hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. They had to create a new vision. And I saw a lot of folks. I mean, there's a lot of restaurants. I think what is the figure? Is it somewhere close to like 50% of restaurants that shut down temporarily, shut down basically permanently, after COVID. They just couldn't get things going again.
Recover. Yeah.
They couldn't recover. But I'm thinking that like a lot of those entrepreneurs, they had to that survived. They had to look at what others were doing. They had to ask other people what were good ideas. They had to ask their community, what they wanted and get that feedback. And I think that those are the ones that were able to survive and pivot. You
Well,
know.
yeah. Yeah, so that's like one of
Yeah.
my first and main principles of vision is discovery,
Yeah.
right? Because I think that as soon as we stop discovering and learning is as soon as we stop having the opportunity to have new vision and, well, the word opportunity, right? Problem solve
Hmm.
through opportunity. So what you're talking about is really this function of intentional discovery and observing my community around me. And honestly,
Yeah.
don't wait for a pandemic. If you're a business
Hmm.
owner, don't rest on your laurels. In fact,
Yeah.
speaking of Disney, Walt Disney himself, my dissertation, my PhD work was my dissertation was on Milton Hershey, Walt Disney, and Steve Jobs, and I studied
Wow.
how they shared in vision formation and vision operationalization from a longitudinal perspective, from the time they were born to the time they died.
Those are really
And
big words. What does that mean?
longitudinal, yeah, long-term study, right? Sorry, long-term study, but basically the process of
Yeah.
vision, vision formation and vision execution. And Disney, he would get upset with his team if they spent too much time reveling in their success on a film or on a live action
Wow.
or on some kind of a project. He like, look, guys, we've got, like, that's okay. Have a little fun tonight. Tomorrow, it's back to making and inventing a new future.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how many of us don't do that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
We just
Yeah.
sit there, let's just count the cash. Let's go boating. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's the fire and the tenacity that got you there that's going to keep
Mhm.
you moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot of vanity metrics that I see that people try to strive for in business. Like I said, like the $1 million business. Okay, but if you're $200,000 in debt, is that really? But those kind of
Totally.
things. Yeah. But I think I also see that in sales. It's like when you close that deal, then it's time to put your feet up and celebrate while your pipeline is starting to dwindle away because you're not working on that next thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so what like motivates people, right? Yeah, you think about,
Yeah.
okay, so the people that are actually continuing to discover are certainly motivated.
Mhm.
And so I've heard it said like this: comfort is the great enemy of progress,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's important, like when we're talking about vision, is to stay and I use this term loosely, maybe in a perpetual state of discomfort, and not
Good. Yeah.
necessarily that you're nervous or you're worried and all that. I wouldn't recommend that, but
Yeah.
I would,
Yeah.
yeah, but I do recommend, like, here, me being a person of faith, like I pray, like, God, shake it up. Don't shake it up too much, but shake it up enough to where I stay in this just a
Yeah.
little bit of tension. And I think that's physiological too. Think about when you go to the gym, right?
Mhm.
Okay, you think about the person that's sitting on the machine, like just hanging over it, like the machine you want to use, right? And then they're
Yeah.
watching the TV. And you're like, okay, you need to get off the machine because you're certainly not getting any stronger.
Mhm.
But when you have tension, right? Then that's when the strength begins to develop. So even this aspect of vision in terms of strengthening ourselves through discovery, having some level of tension, I think is another aspect that we need to make sure that people are addressing, even and especially during the times when there's peace or you feel like, okay, we're in a good spot.
Yeah. No, that's good because sometimes people are afraid to ask the questions because, I mean, they're afraid of what the answers might be too.
Yeah, indeed, right? And so sometimes you have to ask
Yeah.
those questions. Just ask the questions yourself. I mean, does fear motivate people? I would think yes. I mean, even in
Yeah.
studies, I mean, visionary entrepreneurs have this relationship with fear and progress, and so the fear is somewhat of a driver, but it's not necessarily fear of failure. They know that they're going to fail, because failure, I don't think it's final. I think it's feedback. I think it's only final when you give up. But I think it's a fear that I'm not going to be able to continue to contribute
Mm.
to societal well-being. And maybe we can talk about more of this on the servant leadership part, but being a part of it, of progressing the human condition,
Yeah.
unless I keep helping the human condition discover new ways to elevate itself. So even
Yeah.
with, even like Steve Jobs, for example, iconic American entrepreneur. Part of his motivation for that fancy iPhone that is, that's so cool, was he was afraid of a device that he called, that would eat the iPod. So
Mhm.
he was so he they had this tremendous success with the iPod,
Yeah.
and then so he went into a little bit of fear mode of like, "Okay, you know what? This is not gonna last forever.
Yeah.
Something will eat the iPod," and he believed it was a cell phone. He believed someone would create a cell phone that would take his market share. So he decided, "I'm gonna be the one that does it." And so he
Nice.
moved
Yeah.
forward, and then it took a long time, but he did it.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting talking about impact. There's a difference between, I think, the entrepreneurial mindset and like the solopreneur, even business owner mindset, because sometimes, many times, people start a business because they need to. Either they're hard to employ just because they want to do it in a better way or their way, or life is just it handed them unemployment, we'll say,
Right.
and so they're in that position. Or but they might just have that kind of vision of just kind of their world, their situation. Okay, I just got to get money into the bank account. I think you start thinking about
Mhm.
like the entrepreneurial mindset, which I think that I encourage people, if you're just kind of a solopreneur, maybe a business owner, and you're kind of comfortable with your business, I think what you're talking about is more entrepreneurial mindset. How am I impacting the world around me, or my community, and how do I find meaning in that and motivation? Is that
Agreed,
is that what
yeah,
you're saying?
and
Yeah.
yeah, totally, it's exactly what I'm saying, and so, look, I mean, when I started as an entrepreneur or a business owner, a solopreneur, really,
Mhm.
in the mid-90s, and I was 21 years old. I mean, if I'm gonna be completely transparent, I wanted to get paid. Look, I wanted to drive
Right,
cool
right.
cars. I wanted to be able to, take girls out and have, and have parties. I was really money motivated. In fact, I dropped out of
Yeah.
college because I thought I could be like, of course, back then, Michael Dell or Jobs or Bill Gates, right? They all dropped
Mhm.
out of college. And then they got rich, right? I was like, oh, what a great formula. It's not the formula,
That's
right?
not the
It's
formula.
not the
Oh,
formula.
okay.
But it took a long time to realize and to figure out, because I failed. I mean, I failed and I failed hard. I was, by the time this was 95, by 98, I was over $100,000 in debt.
Mhm.
And so I was definitely going the wrong way to financial independence, right? I mean, if I wanted to be rich, that wasn't the way to get there, because I was negative, net worth. And so, but what I began to realize was that I had the wrong focus. The focus was on me and my needs and what I wanted for me, instead of the focus on serving others and providing value for others. Now, granted, I had businesses that did that, but not with a conviction. Not with a
Yeah.
sense of my customer. I want my customer to have such an amazing experience, for their needs to be met in such an amazing way that they become not only brand advocates but raving fans.
Yeah.
And then the money, and then the money part, I don't want to say it works itself out, but it certainly makes it easier
Mhm.
to be I use the word successful, loosely, because it has a lot of different connotations, but to enjoy the fruit of my labor through improving the human condition. I guess the point I'm making is, for the solo entrepreneur or the small business owner, it doesn't have to be expansive. Like, I'm 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 making a difference for the whole world. Maybe you make a difference for one customer,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that becomes two, and then four, and then eight, and it continues to multiply. And I think
Yeah.
that's how we can improve the human condition, one person at a time.
I think the power of the excitement that you see on a customer's face when it's a job well done, when they're excited for what you did for them, or what you did for them and how that's going to impact their lives, what they're going to be able to do with that is is a powerful thing to focus on, and just thinking about how can I scale up that impact? How can I do that? And then I think part of it too is, how do you set a vision for helping other people in your company be able to do that for other people as well, and have that
Yeah.
kind of same experience?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to, I think it comes back to your value system
Hmm.
and in your organization. So, having a strong sense of values and being able to articulate those to where they're not only
Yeah.
meaningful to you, but meaningful to those who you bring around you, are important. Or they're actually not only important, I think they're essential. And,
Hmm.
people have these arbitrary value statements, integrity and honesty and all that. And so they're kind of blanket statements, but I would encourage small business owners and solopreneurs, and even anyone listening that's got a large organization and entrepreneurial, to evaluate how we use our values as barriers and boundaries, as a
Hmm.
barometer or a litmus test, whether you are a fit for this
Hmm.
organization. And I'll use a quick example. And this is all part of the vision mindset, right? So the vision of where we're going, well, we have to have values that buffer that direction. And
Hmm.
so, like, one of the first questions I ask new potential new hires is, do you have a servant's heart? Because I want to know, what motivates them to interact with people, because serving is an essential value for for the organizations that I lead. And so if the answer is no, then I know right away that this won't be a fit for the vision that I've set forth. But if the
Hmm.
answer is maybe, or tell me more about it, or absolutely, then we can keep the conversation going. I think it's really important for us to identify what those values are and why they're important to moving our vision forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a great segue to the next part. But I did want to hit upon a couple of things before we get over there. So we'll come back to that. So segue. Um, we have, under our company, Time for Success. We have some free, business coaching, which, if you want to throw that up, um, Jason, for us. But part of that is some training, but part of it is some masterminding. And that masterminding, I do that because it helps people kind of clarify their own thoughts as they try to help other people when they try to give feedback. because that's the point where we let everybody kind of give their feedback, ideas, and support, like, somebody who's kind of comes up with a problem or a situation or whatever we're focusing on, right? And it allows other people to process kind of their own thoughts, but then it also creates all these opportunities for people seeing around corners and through walls and getting that complete view around the situation, or at least more of a complete view, because they've got all these other perspectives. Nate, I know you do some masterminds and some groups. So what power do you see in the mastermind, and how does that relate to 360-degree vision for you and your clients?
Well, that's a great question. So the mastermind is an amazing environment
Hmm.
for peers to collaborate. And so the way I've set up the mastermind environment is this board of advisors who are
Hmm.
hand selected to help you identify those blind spots in that 360-degree vision that you're talking about, because there's no more power than the power of shared purpose. And so when
Mm,
others
yeah.
share in your purpose and your plight and are investing in you to help you to envision a wider spectrum, if you will, for
Hmm.
your vision, that who have not only experience in different areas, but I would even say, even from a diversity perspective, I love to interact and bring people in my purview in the mastermind environment from different industries, from different backgrounds, because they will add a different perspective on my vision and the vision of those who walk alongside of me. And of course, having a receptiveness to that is really important,
Hmm.
right? You just can't live in a state of pride and I've got it figured out. And I think that kind of circles back around to how we started this conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's great, and pride I think can be the the biggest blind spot that people have. They don't even realize that they have, and the biggest blinder, if you will, because it even blinds you to the fact that that there's other perspectives around there, because you value yours more than other people. And I think that'll take us into part two, of this idea of servant leadership, because I think that can kind of be a way to kind of break that pride up and start learning about the vision of other people, and start seeing more of the value of that, and how actually that can help you accelerate your business so much faster than you thinking you know it all.
I
So
agreed.
is that cool? All right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we're going to really quickly run a quick commercial of Dr. Flory, and we'll come right back here in just about 30 seconds. Okay.
Sounds
Have you
good.
been suffering from chronic pain, disease, or sleep disorders? Did you know that 75 to 90% of disease is caused by inflammation in the body? The sad truth is, most doctors just treat symptoms rather than finding and fixing root causes of inflammation. If you want to fix your health problems, then finding and fixing the cause of the inflammation is a must. It's time to demand this for your health care and start living life to its fullest again. Book a discovery appointment with the Functional Health Team founder, Dr. Flory, to get your answers ASAP at www.functionalhealthtteam.com. All right, and we're back. We're back. And again, just supporting Dr. Flory, because the way that he supports people is amazing. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of the symptoms that they have is typically caused by some sort of inflammation in the body, and then there's some sort of cause for that, and they get stuck taking meds and just getting long-term treatment, as opposed to really figuring out what the root problem is and attacking that. So love Dr. Flory and his work. So we were talking before about 360 degree vision, and how pride can be that biggest blinder, thinking that we
Yeah.
know it all, thinking that we know what's best. And I think that that's kind of a great segue into servant leadership, because once you start understanding the power of servant leadership, it can really kind of help break up that pride and help you see the value in other people's perspectives and what they're trying to do. So, Nate, I know this is so near and dear to your heart. And if you're just tuning in now, we've got Nate. He is a PhD in entrepreneurial leadership. He's probably spent, you guesstimate, over 50,000 hours
Yeah, I would at least,
at least, at
yeah.
least studying leadership, especially in the entrepreneurship space, and as it relates to even small business. So, Nate, if servant leadership is near and dear to your heart after over 50,000 hours of studying leadership in all its different forms. Tell me about like what is servant leadership and why is it so powerful?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question. So, when I first started studying servant leadership as well as other leadership approaches, there's lots of approaches, transformational leadership and adaptive leadership, and there's different, there's trait theory and behavior theories and so on and so forth. And I won't bore our audience with all of these different types of, academic approaches, but what struck me with servant leadership was this sort of radical approach to how we move others forward and influence them.
Hmm.
And in order to understand servant leadership, I think we need to start with just really leadership. Like what is leadership? Because we throw that term around. We look at political leadership or community leadership, a family, obviously business leadership,
Yeah.
all different frameworks. And so there's about as many definitions of leadership as there are those who have attempted to define the construct, as one scholar once said. And
Yeah.
so, but I like to distill things. So if I were to distill leadership in 10 words or less, I would say that leadership has really four primary attributes, and of course, at least four, but certainly others will add to this. But I'd say leadership first involves discovery, and I think we talked about that during the first part of this segment. Leaders are discoverers. We're observing and learning about our current context, thinking about our past context, and of course, ultimately our future context, right? Because where we want to go is ultimately an important aspect of leadership. And of course, the second component is influence. Of course, it's been said leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. I would disagree with that because I think there's so much more to leadership than just influence. I could, of course, you could make the adage is you could put a gun to someone's head and influence them to maybe give you your wallet, right? That's not necessarily leadership. But influence is an important aspect of it. So once we discover where we want to go, then we share that with others, and then influence others to come alongside of us and join us in that journey. And ultimately, good leadership has a third component, which is achievement. Right? They actually get there. Right? You can be a leader and never get to your desired destination. That might make you not a very good leader. Right? To put it very plainly. But all of it's wrapped up in this fourth component is shared purpose. And so, shared purpose is the glue, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
in this model of leadership. So if I were to just say in a sense, I would say leadership is the discovery of, influence toward, and achievement of shared purpose. And so as leaders, I think we need to make sure that we're discovering, and then we're sharing our desired destination with others, and then walking alongside. And I'm not the one that's achieving, right? We are achieving, right? Because we share
Yeah.
this passion, this purpose, this vision to go someplace new. And so that's the basis of leadership. So what's so cool about servant leadership? Well, first of all, you say servant leadership, and for some in our audience, and some that have experienced some level of serving, they think, well, how can leadership and serving be the same thing, right?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
can you lead and serve at the same time? Because isn't a
Yeah.
servant a follower, right? I mean, it sounds
Right.
almost like an oxymoron, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it does to a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, wouldn't serving be considered even a sign of weakness because someone else is in control, right? I
Mm.
mean, so
Mm-hmm.
these are like kind of mind-blowing, like even the connection. But here's where servant leadership, here's what it means. Uh, the servant leader, as Robert Greenleaf said, Robert Greenleaf, he didn't coin the term servant leadership, but he certainly popularized it back in the 70s as an approach. And he said that the servant leader is servant first. This is a
Mm-hmm.
person who desires to serve others. And he says that the servant leader is helping others, you can call them followers, to be freer, to be wiser, to be healthier, to be more autonomous, to themselves become servant leaders. And so this idea of servant leadership is really wrapped around, how do I help those whom I'm called to lead become the best version of themselves they can be?
Hmm.
Operate in their genius zone, so to speak, right? So when I bring, when people work for me, or when I coach or help entrepreneurs or other leaders, I ask them, flat out, are you creating space for you, the people who work for you, work alongside of you, whatever you want to call it, to operate in their genius zone? And people are sometimes perplexed by that. Like, well, why has it got to be about them?
Well, yeah, I thought this business was about me.
It's
Why is
about
it?
me,
What are you
right?
talking about?
That's where
Yeah,
that pride and ego come in, right?
yeah,
But here's the
absolutely.
thing. That's a pyramidal approach, and it's very typical in business, right? CEO,
Yeah.
all the C-suite, and then
Hmm.
directors and so on and so forth. And who's at the bottom, right? The bottom, your frontline people, right? And they're,
Right, right.
for some reason, they have less value. But that's really not the model of servant leadership. It's flipped. And I think Jesus, said it best when he said that, he who is greatest among you is your servant. If anyone wants to be great, learn to serve. But his model was this. His model was like the model of, he said that I am the vine and you are the branches, right? So he had more of a tree model. So the tree model is, the root of the tree is where the nourishment comes in, of course, right? And
Hmm.
then, call it an apple tree, right? And the apples are your employees, right? So you're nourishing your employees from the bottom up, not from the top down, to be the best possible version of themselves, to be fruitful, to be fragrant, to be, to edify, to build up, to do the best possible work they can do. And so I think
Yeah,
it's a very attractive model for me and for others, but not only, I mean, it's not only attractive because it sounds nice, but it actually works. I mean,
yeah.
servant leadership it works. There's some major companies who are brand dominant who
Hmm.
employ the servant leadership model. Think of Southwest Airlines, right? They're called the Love Airlines because they believe that love is at the heart of it. And so Herb Kelleher, who was the CEO, was once famously asked, who's more important, your employees or your customers? And his response was, I make my customers most important because I make my employees most important.
Brilliant,
Right?
brilliant answer. Yeah.
Brilliant answer. Brilliant answer. That's servant leadership. Chick-fil-A, another, dominant industry leader, servant leadership model. Look, they close one day a week, billions in costs. They still sell more chicken than any other chicken restaurant on the planet.
Uh-huh.
And part of that is because of the culture they've created from a
Hmm.
servant leadership mentality.
Hmm. That's powerful. And I see that when working with a lot of entrepreneurs too, because the ones that show that they care about what their team members want out of their lives are the ones that seem to thrive the most. Now, of course, like now there's got to be a certain line though, right? Like I think some people might look at it and be like, well, what if I give too much? Okay, yeah, I want to serve, but like I can't give them the company. So how would you differentiate
Yep.
like when it's time to serve or and when it's time to kind of like draw a line or is there a line? Or are we looking at it the wrong way?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. I've thought about this question as well.
Yeah.
And it's a question that's bound to come up is, can you serve to your own detriment?
Mm.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the answer is yes and no. It's yes if you have not specified very clear vision, mission, and values. It's
Okay.
no
Yeah.
if you define those and you stick by them. Because
Mhm.
if you're, let's just call it your, if your mission, if serving someone in a way that contradicts your mission happens, then the answer is no. If it contradicts your value system, then the answer is no. But if the answer is yes and it moves them toward that, right, then you keep serving in that way. So you create the right kind of boundaries
Hmm.
and systems in
Okay.
place and the processes that ultimately guide how you serve without you having to, survey and have surveillance over all these activities. So I'm constantly going around to my team and asking them, what do you need? And
Mhm.
one of my guys, he says it the same thing every time. Well, $1 million would be great, right? And so, and I tell him, well, it's just not in our vision, mission, and values, right? To give you $1 million, right? It's a detriment to the direction we're going. And he laughs about it. But I think to your point, right? We got to get that
Mhm.
straight first.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's huge because if let's say your value is to equip people to achieve their goals and and give them the tools or there's something along in that kind of that entrepreneurial mindset of themselves, to be able to live at their best value. And somebody says, hey, I want $1 million. Great. I want $1 million for you as well. But if I just give you $1 million, I'm not necessarily lifting it up to our values. However, I can work with you and help you figure out how to make and earn $1 million. Right? Like, is that kind of that
Yeah,
difference?
that would be that would be now, as long as that fit within the model, right?
Right.
The business
Yeah.
model. But yes, no, it's an excellent example. But here's what you did. What you did is you listened,
Hmm.
right? You cared. I think it was Maxwell that said people don't care what you know until they know you care, right?
Yeah.
These are tenets, if you will, of the servant
Hmm.
leadership approach. One of the first tenets is listening, and listening is an active, I care about what you're saying. So I'm going to listen to you intently. And how often, and I'm guilty, how often have you someone come into your office and you're listening, but you're typing an email, right? Or you're responding to a text, or you're opening mail because you're trying to multitask, and that's not really
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
And so, I think a step one, like you said, is listen, hey, what are your, what is it that what is it that you need? Where are you at? How can I help you to achieve your goals within our
Hmm.
framework, our
Hmm.
context? And maybe here's another thing. Maybe their long-term goal isn't to be with you.
Yeah.
If you've got the kind of transparency in an organization to where you have such a servant leader mindset that people are willing to share that with you, and you're willing to help them along their way while they're with you, and then give them your blessing when they leave.
Yeah.
Wow, how powerful is that? Who would you rather work for? Let's just, let's what is the output that you
Yeah.
have, the performance level, and studies have shown this again and again, that a servant leadership approach in a business, increases performance, increases productivity, job satisfaction, reduces turnover. And and it it it, it you don't have to be a scholar to understand that. Like, I would rather work for somebody that actually cares about me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even for if you have the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Like, who would you rather work for? Somebody who, tried to try to keep you down and just tried to keep you like focused on your paycheck, or somebody who said, you know what, I love the idea that you want to own your own business. I want that for you as well. How about I mentor you, and when you're ready to start, maybe we can be business partners, or maybe you can open up another location, or maybe kind of a franchise or something, like maybe we can do that together and
Yes.
both rise, as
Yes.
opposed to, well, I'm just going to try to just hold you here for as long as I can, and I hope that you don't leave and steal all of our secrets, or fire you immediately because they find out that you want to open up your own business.
Man, I love that. Collaborators and colleagues rather than
Yeah,
competitors. And
yeah,
I mean, Milton Hershey actually reminded me of him. You're probably familiar with Reese's, right? You probably had a
mhm,
Reese's at
yeah,
some point in your life,
yeah. They
right?
just came out with like the largest Reese's ever recently too, didn't they?
Yeah, did they?
Reese's,
Yeah, but
yeah,
yeah, that's pretty cool. I got a buddy who
yeah,
actually loves one of my classmates, and working on my PhD, I would always send him Reese's during the holidays. The biggest one I could find. Maybe there's a bigger one I can send him. But the founder of Reese's worked for Hershey, and then left. Well, he stayed in Hershey. He stayed living in Hershey, and Hershey supplied his chocolate.
wow,
And
yeah,
yeah, and then eventually Hershey bought him back, bought Reese's. But and the same thing with Mars. Hershey supplied the chocolate for Mars as well, a competitor. So Milton Hershey, he had it figured out, right? He looked
hmm,
at folks as especially people in his organization, as not as competitors, but as colleagues. Now, of course, Wrigley, he thought as a competitor, because I don't even get into that, but he Hershey tried to come up with a six stick chewing gum to put Wrigley out of business. And they had a little disagreement during some gambling on a chip. But anyways,
Well, sometimes you don't, as the kids say, vibe with people, so I guess that happens.
well, yeah. So, but that's a really healthy approach to the people who I'm called a steward during that period. I had an employee who I thought would be a protege for me, and eventually ended up opening their own company. And this individual left with my blessing, and now we're still colleagues. This person sends me business, and I try to continue to give advice and help and be a part of that person's life. What an amazing way to do business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I love the servant leadership model and the way that you described it, because, to me, it's like to me, bringing my highest value is to like help other people feel significant and find their significance and bring that to the world, so I love this is because, I think that if you can figure out, why somebody wants to be part of the vision that you said, why they want to be on mission with you and not just work on your mission, then and how like they've got their own personal kind of mission and how that fits into the bigger picture. Like if you can bring all that together, I think that's when you get, I mean, just massive acceleration. Right.
Agreed. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the contribution level is just it's really like you said, it's exponential.
Hmm.
And people want to stay. They
Yeah.
want to work for you. We've got this, mass, what do we call it? The Great Resignation.
Right.
Right. And
Hmm.
so I think that companies who are serving, who care, who have empathy, who are willing to help people through this very challenging time will fare better and are faring better because they don't have to try to like coax people to come and work for them for these sign-on bonuses and all these other things. And they're trying to throw some kind of transactional leadership at them. But we're there, and servant leadership is in some ways it is transformational, right? Even though
Hmm.
transformational leadership is another branch, they share elements because what we're doing in a way is we're taking not only the transactions are important, but we're
Hmm.
also talking through transformation because if we're going to use Greenleaf's litmus test, we're also creating servant leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know we've only got a few minutes left, and I know that you've got a podcast and you've got mastermind groups and all that stuff. So, tell me a little bit more about what your podcast focuses on.
Yeah, man. We're launching a new podcast here at top of the year 2022. It's called A Call to Leadership. And
Hmm.
really just calling people to leadership, people who perhaps didn't think that they could lead or should lead. Also, people that are in leadership who want to expand, become more transformational leaders, and really just make a greater impact in their leadership world. So we're gonna tackle big, complex, even controversial topics. So definitely excited about that.
Good, good. Yeah, that's great, and I look forward. I'm going to be on your show. Well, we already recorded it, but it's going to be out on what in early January.
Early January. So
Yeah.
excited about that. We had a great conversation and
Oh yeah.
just such a blessing.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a blessing to be on there. So I'm looking forward to that coming out. But definitely check it out. And what's your website?
Greatsummit.com. Yeah, they can just go to
Okay.
your listeners go to greatsummit.com and they can just click on the show and they can get more information about it there.
Fantastic. And what's the best way to reach you? Is it just going to your website or?
You bet. Yeah, they can just go to the website and they can contact us through the website and
Okay.
contact link. Yeah.
Okay. Well, fantastic, fantastic. Well, it's been fantastic having you on the show today. Just kind of a quick summary of steps to take. What do you think are the biggest takeaways from both parts of the show for entrepreneurs to go out there and take some action?
Yeah, absolutely. Take action first. For the first part of the show, discovery. Right, as if you
Mm,
want to expand your
yeah,
vision, get out of your seat and discover the world around you, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Start to get people in your camp who will give you the hard advice. Right, that will be help you to be accountable for moving your vision forward. Do not sit in comfort,
yeah,
have a state of somewhat of a state of discomfort and continue to think about the shared purpose and improving the human condition. And then the second part, really servant leadership. Takeaways are Look, servant leaders rock. Okay. Servant leaders rock because they're not worried about their own power, prestige, or position, right? They're interested
Yeah.
in elevating others. They do that by listening, they do that by empathy, by caring. By being a part of the team, and also about setting the right kind of boundaries, creating a strong sense of vision, creating a strong mission, and a strong set of values that ultimately guide how we best serve.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much today, Nate. And
My pleasure.
again, thank you. And again, remember to check out, we've got free business coaching coming up, I think on the 10th. So jump in on that and check out Nate's show as well. Look forward to seeing you all around.
You as well, my friend.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you for being with us today. But now is the time to put what we talked about into practice. Remember, your family, employees, and community are depending on you to rise up and win. The great news is you're not alone. You're part of a resurgence of entrepreneurs who are ready to take their business, life, and impact to the next level, and we're going to do it together. This show is powered by Time for Success, where we help business owners every day who want more freedom and wealth while building a legacy of positive impact. Please follow Time for Success on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube for more helpful strategies and tools for creating the business and life of your dreams.